Hello everyone. So today we're gonna use Deno, which is a replacement for Node.js, and we'll use it to make RESTful APIs. So we're gonna use Oak, which is a middleware framework for Deno's HTTP server. For the database, we're gonna use Mongo. We're gonna use this database driver for Deno. So we're gonna make a couple of APIs which will fetch recipes from the database and create recipes in the database. The first API is get. So if we send the request, we get the response back with the list of recipes. In order to create a recipe, we'll do a post on this endpoint and with the body, title, description, and ingredients. So let's go ahead and create a recipe. So in the response, I get recipe created with the recipe ID. Welcome to this channel called Screens. I'll be posting videos related to design and development. So subscribe to the channel and like the video. So hello guys, today we're gonna see Deno, which is a secure runtime for JavaScript and TypeScript. So let's go ahead with the installation steps. The first thing you need to do is install the Deno. So if you're using Mac, Linux, or Windows, you can use the following commands. My development environment is Windows 10 and I have installed Ubuntu using WSL. Go to deno.land, which is the main website, and you can follow the installation steps mentioned. So for Linux, you can do curl this. So when you go to the manual, it says installation, and in the installation you can choose the installation step according to your OS and add it to your environment. Okay, so now you can see that I have Deno installed. So when you run this command, you will see the output welcome to Deno and the icon of dinosaur. So this is how you set up Deno on your system. So let's start by creating our REST APIs, where I'll be using Mongo for storing the documents, and I'll be using Oak as a HTTP server. So I'll be using two external dependencies here. So when you go to Deno website, you can see that it has a set of standard libraries and it has a set of third-party libraries. So I'll go to third-party libraries and search for Mongo. So you can see that there is a Mongo library which you can use. So we're going to use this one, and we're going to use Oak, which is a middleware framework for Deno's HTTP server, which will help us in routing. So I have created a new folder here and I'll add index.ts. So in this video, I'll be using TypeScript. So I'll make a file called index.ts, and in index.ts we'll just console log something. So we'll just console log this. So in order to run this index.ts file, we need to run this command deno run index.ts. So now you can see that the file is compiling and we have a console log which says Deno, welcome to Deno. Okay, so nice thing of having Deno is that you don't need package.json file as well. So you just need to provide dependency, the URL of the dependency, and it will pull it to your local system. So let's go ahead and add a dependency to this, and what we'll do is import. So we're gonna import two things: application and context. So when I showed you this link, we can go to the Oaks link. So we're gonna import this from here and we'll import it. And now you can see, and then we'll create a new application. We'll say const app is equal to new application. So we are going to get, so we're gonna add the middleware and we'll listen to the context. So this is the context, and add a response. So context has a property called response and body, and in the body you can add anything, and we'll add welcome to Deno. Okay, and we'll get rid of this and we gonna say await app.listen, and we can start listening on a port. Okay, so in order to listen to a port, we need to pass port like this. So I'll be listening to the port 8000 here. So I'll do 8000. When you're using VS Code, you can install this extension called Deno, and this is the extension which is written by just Java C. So this is the extension which you need to download. So basically, it will get rid of bunch of the errors which you might get while developing, and also it will not require a ts config file. So it will pick the ts config file automatically. So let's go ahead and run this. So when you say run, and let's open. So now you can see that this says permission denied. So you cannot access the network on Deno. It is one of the security features which Deno provides, that you cannot run the system resources directly. So in order to run that, we need to pass. So this will allow us to run the application on localhost and port 8000. So I'll create a file called api.rest. So I've installed a handy plugin, which is a REST client. So you can go ahead and install this REST client. So we can use this extension and run your REST APIs inside the VS Code. So in order to run this, we'll do http://localhost, and we'll give the port 8000. And now you can see there is a send request button which is available here. So when you click on send request, you can see on the right hand side a window pops up and the response is there. So response is welcome to Deno, which is great. So let's start giving structure to our repository here. So first I'll create controllers folder, then I'll create DB folder, and then also I'll create services, and then I'll also create repositories. Okay, so let's rename this to repositories. Create another folder here called entities. Okay, so I'll go into DB folder and I'll add a file called mongo.ts. Okay, so in mongo.ts, what we're gonna do is import the Mongo client and initialize the client and get the DB. As I showed you, you can go into third-party modules and search for Mongo. So when I click this Mongo, so this is the library, this is the third-party library which I am gonna use for DB connections to MongoDB. So this is how you're gonna initialize it. So I'll copy a bunch of stuff from here. The first line quotes init and Mongo client from this URL, and then we are awaiting for the initialization, and then I'll create a client out of this Mongo client, and client will be connected with a URI. So in order to get the URI, I'll copy paste my URI. So you need to pass in a Mongo URI. So I'll not show how to install Mongo on your system. So what you can do is go to a service provider which provides you the Mongo server, and a lot of the providers give you a free database to work with or play around with. So you can use that database here. So I have the client now. So what I'll do is go ahead and get the DB from it. So I'll get the DB from the client and I'll export this. Okay. So now we have our Mongo client set up. So now I'll go ahead and create a repository which will directly connect to this client and fetch data from the database. So I will create a file called recipe repo. So if you're wondering, I'll try to create a recipe scrud. So we'll call it a recipe repository, and we'll have an empty constructor here. So we'll import db from, so let's import db. So you can note how I am giving this extension .ts. Okay, so normally this would give you an error, but due to the plugin which I have installed, it will honor the default ts config, and it will not, and it will suppress this error for us. Okay, so let's create a read-only recipe collection. So we'll do recipe collection, and we'll get the recipe collections. So now we have a recipe collection. So let's keep this read-only. Okay, and we'll create a async function. And let's name it select all, or let's just call it find. Okay, so this will get all the recipes for us. So we can do, so this will get our recipes for us. So we'll await this dot recipe collection dot find. So we'll get this recipe collection from the DB and then find all the recipes, and then return the recipe. So we have our first query set up. So let's go ahead and wire this find. So let's create a service for this. So we'll call it recipe service. Okay. So now we need to import the recipe repository, and we create a class called recipe service. We'll create an empty constructor here as well, and then we'll create the instance of recipe repository. So we'll have read only recipe. Okay, and let's add a function called get recipes. So this will be an async function. We don't need any parameter for this. And we'll return. Okay, now we have our service set up. Let's go to controller and create the controller file. So we'll have a recipe controller. So we'll import the recipe. So I forgot to export the class here. So you just need to export default recipe service here, and also for repository we need to export here export default recipe repository. So we'll go to recipe controller and import the recipe service. And then we'll initiate this recipe service. So let's initiate this recipe service. Okay, and now we'll export a function called get recipes. So we'll export get recipes here. So this will be also an async function. and it will take the context. So basically this is a callback which will return the response. So we don't have the type for context, we need to import. So we'll import context, router context from Oak directly, and we'll provide this as a type, router context. Oh sorry, I need to rename this file to TS. So rename. Okay, so now we have provided the type for context. So we just need to add the response, and we'll await and get the recipe from recipe service. Get recipes. Okay, so basically this will add the recipe to the response body. Let's go ahead and create our routes file really quick. So routes.ts. So in routes.ts file, I'll add the routes. So we need to import the router here. Copy paste this and change application to router. And we will do const router. So we'll add routes to this router. So we need to add routes, router.get. The first parameter takes the route itself. So we'll add the recipes route here, and we'll provide the callback from the controller. So we'll import. So we have our get recipes callback, and then we'll add this to the callback. So get recipes. Now let's export this router. And add it to our index.ts file. So let's add the router as a middleware here. So what we need to do is import the route first. So we'll do import this routes.ts, and we'll add the so we'll just add all the routes from the router. So I think I'm pretty much done here. So let's check this out. So we'll run this index.ts file. So this gives me this error. Okay, so in order to bypass this error, we need to run. So this error is due to this. So this error is due to this Mongo plugin which we are using, which is kind of unstable. So we need to add unstable flag, which it says. So what I'll do is, so instead of passing all these flags, we'll just do -a. So we'll just do -a, and we'll also add unstable. So now you can see when I run this, it downloads the Deno Mongo plugin from this URL, and then it also loads the Deno Mongo plugin. Okay, so let's go ahead and query our routes, which is recipes. So we can also provide the method here. So when I click on send request, now you can see that I get all my recipes. So this is the database which I am working on. So now you can see that we are able to fetch the data directly from the MongoDB. So we'll go to our recipe repository and add a function called insert1. This will insert a doc into the database. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll do insert, and insert1 will take a recipe. Okay. And now you can see that I need to define the type for recipe. So what I'll do is in the entities folder, I'll create a new file which will be recipe, which is the interface for recipe. So we'll go ahead and quickly create this file and define the type for recipe. So this I'll do. So we'll create an interface called iRecipe. And we'll have a title which is a string, then we have a description which is again a string, and then we have an array which is ingredients which is an array. Okay, so which is basically a string array. Okay, now since we have created the interface, let's go ahead and provide the type for this. So in order to provide the type, we'll need the import statement here. So we'll just import the iRecipe. So now the type has been provided here. Okay, and what we'll do is we'll await this dot recipe collection dot insert one, and we will insert the recipe. Okay, now let's get back the ID for that new column. So now we'll get the ID of this new document. So in order to get the new document's ID, what we'll do is deconstruct the ID. Okay, and then return this. So since you can see here that when I send the request here, Mongo will give us the ID, and we need to get the ID out of, so we'll need to get the OID out of this ID field. So that's why I have deconstructed that OID. So let's go ahead and quickly add this to the service. So in order to add this to a service, we'll just add a function called create recipe, and this is a async function which will take recipe as a parameter. We need to provide the type here once again, so we'll import the type here. Okay, and we'll provide the type here, which is iRecipe. We'll go ahead and then what we'll do is return await this dot recipe repository dot insert one, and we'll pass recipe. Okay, so now I have our recipe service set up. Now we want to add it to the controller. So what I'll do is I'll create a function called create recipe. Using function, it will again take a context, and it will be a type of router context. So now you want to read the request body. Okay, so in order to read the request body, I'm gonna restructure the context and get the request and response from here. So let's go and restructure request response, and we'll check if the request has a body. So there's a function called has body on the request, and you need to check if the request has body. If the request doesn't have the body, we'll throw an error here. So we'll do a response dot status. For now, let's add the status to be 400, and then you can add the body to the response, and we'll add a body with a message saying that invalid recipe body, so invalid recipe data. So we'll add a message saying invalid recipe data, and then we'll return from here. Okay, and if the request has a body, so let's get the value from that. So we need to destructure the value from the body. So in order to do that, and I'll also destructure the value with title, description, and ingredients, and let's await request.body. Okay, so what I'll do is destructure the body and get the value, and then destructure it into title, description, and ingredients. Okay, now we want to create the recipe from this data. So we'll use the recipe service, and then we'll create a recipe, and we'll pass. Okay, and this will give us the ID, recipe ID, and we're gonna use that recipe ID and pass it to the response. So we'll create the response body as with a message recipe created, and we'll pass the recipe ID. Okay, so since we have our controller set up, let's go ahead and add it to the route. So we'll open the routes file, and then we'll add another method called post, and we'll have a post on recipes, and we'll use the callback. So we need to import create recipes here, create recipe, and then do create recipe here as well. Okay, let's go ahead and format this, and let's open up our api.rest file and construct the request body. So this is how we create the request. So we'll add the method post, and then the endpoint. We'll provide the content type and the body. So now you can see that when I click on it, I'll get a message saying that recipe created and the recipe ID for it. So now we're done with this. So I assume that you'll be able to create the other endpoints, which is get the recipe by ID, update by ID, and delete. So I'll just give you a clue here how to get the params from the request. So in order to get the request parameters, what you need to do is, so you just need to call context.param. So you can do like this, context.params. If your parameter is called ID, you can call params.id and add a null check to the ID, and you are good to go. So you'll be able to get the ID from the path. So thank you. That was it. If you have made this far, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel.